What's up, everybody? Welcome to Wednesday. Things are crazy over here in California. There's fires raging everywhere. The wind is also nuts, but this is what we all get to go through. There's all these questions about our overlords and have they set us up for this? And why is that happening? So, have they set us up for this, or is this just random occurrences? It's crazy because I know several people that had to evacuate their homes. And also, I was watching some newscasters this morning, just with firemen just watching the houses burn, watching the cars burn. And we all just accept it because it's what's here for us. But anyways, that's just a little local events of what's going on. What's going on with everybody out there? I was thinking yesterday because I've been in the psychology space for my entire life. Like even since I was an adolescent, I was going to college at 17 years old, studying psychology. And the great thing about Human Garage is that when I was going around and doing the events with them, this is a practice that we use our body, right? We're doing fascial maneuvers, which are postures. We're using our breath. However, at least 90% of the people, pretty much 100% of the people that came up and talked to me weren't necessarily concerned with their body. They were recognizing that their body is the gateway to the mind, to the emotions, to the trauma. That's why we called those events the Transforming Trauma series of events that we went all over the world helping people. And as a young person studying psychology, I was recognizing that there's this split that we have in the mainstream narrative that the body and the mind are separate. And it's completely just a program because the body and the mind are as separate as we just determine them to be. But the body is the mind and the mind is the body. We're taught that there's only a brain in the head and that the brain is making all the decisions and the body is just sort of like this machine that's just taking us to places, taking us to go eat, taking us to the bathroom, taking us to go do the responsibility to get the green pieces of paper that we can then trade for food and liquor and entertainment and stuff that we can attract a mate. And it's like we're this control mechanism up in the head. It's like we're just like a rat that's steering around this ship. I really shouldn't say a rat, but it's just like a advanced level processing that's utilizing the body as a mechanical machine. And that's absolutely not how it is. So if you guys could drop in the chat right now, why is it that you are following Human Garage? Why is it that you practice fascia maneuvers if you do that? Because for some people, it is all about physical. But I definitely know that the people that showed up, that gave a day and showed up at the event, most everybody was there for something emotional or something that they couldn't really mentally control in their reality. And that's because the mind is in the body. So first of all, we do know that depending on where you look, there's 86 billion to 100 billion neurons in the brain. And we also know recent science by the Heart Math Institute that there's 40,000 neurons in the heart. So there's actually neurons in the heart. And there's 100 million neurons in the gut, in the intestinal tract. We know this. So 100 million versus 100 billion. So that's essentially 1% of 1% of our brain, of what we consider the brain, which is neurological power. Our neurons, 1% of 1%, is actually happening outside of the head. It's happening in the gut. And the gut are where the organs are, right? That's where all the organs are interacting with the nourishment that we bring into the body. And by nourishment, it's not just food. how do we breathe? Like, where do we breathe from? We don't necessarily breathe from the nose and the mouth. It's definitely where the air comes into the body, but we're not pulling air in with the nose and the mouth. They're just essentially valves. They open up and allow us, the diaphragm, which is down here with our gut intelligence, with our organs, which are organizing the energy of the body. That's what's actually bringing in the air. And what's in the air? We're taught oxygen. And we exhale carbon dioxide as a waste gas, which it's not necessarily waste. Carbon dioxide is essential. Like, our body uses it. There's also other ways to breathe as well. So when you're in your fascial maneuvers and you're taking these deep inhales and you're in these pressurized postures, if you have an awareness and a focus that can expand your perspective of what you're doing, then that grants you the ability to harness that extra perspective. So within the air is, according to the East, according to Taoism, according to a lot of ancient cultures, there's life force energy, otherwise known as chi, ki, prana, in the air. And this is where, like, the practice of qigong is about harmonizing this energy within the air, moving very, very slowly, and eventually being able to breathe it in. And there's gates in the body. And there's the mouth and the nose, I mentioned earlier, is a gate. And there's also gates that can take in this energy that's etherical. It doesn't have to come in through the nose and the mouth because it's essentially non-physical. It can travel through skin. And there's something called bone breathing that you can do. And essentially how it works is, one of the main philosophies is, the more that we breathe in through our nose and mouth, and I would even say the more energy and period that we take in through our nose and mouth, including eating. So if we're just all up here eating, consuming a lot of calories, breathing a lot, we're focusing on the inhale. There's about 3 tangents I want to go on right now. So 1 is how you breathe. 2 is gates in the mind, neurological gates, basically the gates of consciousness. And there's a 3rd one that I already forget. It's basically the pathway that I was going on. I already forget what direction I was going. Bone breathing. All right, so let me just finish up bone breathing, and then I'm going to come back and talk about the different ways that you inhale, where you focus on the inhale, relax the exhale, or do we focus on the exhale and relax the inhale? Because those are 2 different things. It's like an active inhale or a passive inhale, or an active exhale or a passive exhale. And your body actually changes modes based on how you're breathing and even how your posture is. If you guys, I forget the name of the book, but for some reason I know the name of the author, Amy Cuddy, I think is her name. The book, have I read it? I think I read it because I know so much about it for some reason. But the front of the book has like a kind of like a stick figure. I don't know. It's like a little doll that's in this power position. And the book talks about different positions. There's also, I'm going on so many tangents. Thank you guys for saying. Ask some questions and that'll help for me. But I have 3 things I'm going. I'm going to finish up bone breathing. I'm going to come back to the posture of breath and what that does to your body mentally and emotionally, and how the mode that your body's in. And then I'm going to go into the gates of the consciousness. But what I mean by that is, you could be walking through a party or walking down the street and you barely hear somebody say your name, and you turn and look. It's not like you were basically listening to everything, right? I'm giving you a preview of this future tangent I'm going on. You're listening to everything, but what's gated and channeled into your conscious awareness is what your brain feels is important. And that's where things like how you breathe, what your posture is making those decisions on what's important in your life. It's gating what's important. And what comes to your awareness is what this inner mechanism feels is important to you. And so all of a sudden, your name, you can walk literally into a crowded bar and all you hear is, it's just like everyone yelling and screaming. Somebody says your name, you're like, boom, over directly, knew where it came from. So it's like, we're making sense of everything. Gosh, this is such an interesting tangent. I'll come back to that. Bone breathing, really quick. The volume's a bit low. Seriously? What if I do this? I have an idea. How about now? Check, check, check. 1, 2, 1, 2. All right, I'll look out for the comments for this. This is the beast microphone that I tend not to use so much. Okay, bone breathing. The less that we can intake from our nose and mouth, the more of this other energy source will come in, the more prana will come in. Okay, so if we just sit in a sitting position, and you guys can do this in your maneuvers, is why I started this whole thing. As opposed to just thinking you're just breathing in through the mouth, you can also start to learn to breathe in through the mouth and collect energy through the different gates of your body, like your perineum, like your kidneys, like your third eye, like your heart center. You can actually, especially when you're doing the organ reset, you can even restrict your breathing a little bit, which is what we're about to do. Restrict your breathing a little bit. And instead of breathing through your nose, you're going to feel your body pulling in through your kidney area in your back, or your perineum, or the bottoms of your feet, or as we're about to do, the tips of the fingers. Thank you for those saying that the volume is fine. I'm assuming that it was probably fine before, but now I'm got this blue thing in my mouth. All right, so just sit still, spine straight, hands just rested on your knees. Should I come way back here? No, stay right here. And just start restricting your breath a little bit. Just like, kind of like Ujjayi breath, but even more. Like kind of amplify Ujjayi breath. Feel that restriction. And this, I was in a 3-day seminar learning how to do this. So I'm going to do it about 2 minutes for you guys so you get a taste. So instead of now feeling the air coming and the energy coming in through your nose, as you restrict the breath, see if you can feel it spiraling in from the tips of your fingers. And it goes in and fills in your bone marrow, which is actually where stem cells are produced. So this was taught to me by Mantak Chia, and it was all about stem cells. And as you exhale, you just kind of let that pack into your bones. So it's spiraling up your arms all the way up into these bigger bones up here, the humerus. And you're feeling it spiral up into the middle of your bone, which is going up the fascial lines. That's why it's spiraling up. And if you can feel it coming in your fingertips, do your toe tips. Really restrict that breath from coming in. See if you can spiral it up through your perineum, which is the root of your body. Okay, so this isn't going to be a whole hour on that, but that's essentially being able to pull in prana, pull in chi from around you into different parts of your body. Gary actually is the first person to show me this, but it also is in coordination to this practice where you can fill up your chakras. And so when you breathe in, you can even restrict the breath a little bit, and you can breathe in the color red, and you're doing that down into your root area, and you can breathe in the color orange, yellow, green, blue. You can start breathing in the different colors of your chakras into those chakra centers, and then you can even start seeing that energy spin. All right, what was the other tangent I was going on? Somebody asked who the name of the authors. I want to say here, let me actually Google it right here. I actually have another screen for you guys. Amy Cuddy, Power, Posture. I don't really even know if that's what, there it is, right here. It's Amy Cuddy, Cuddy, book. Yep, Presence is the name of it. There we go. See, that's a little stick figure I was talking about. All right. Do we go on to channeled gates of consciousness? Like what actually brings conscious awareness into our perception? Or do we go on to, what was the other thing? The other thing was how we breathe. Let's go on to breathing, because this one's quick. So Marnique says it feels like my insides are shaking. Okay, so guys, this type of energy also need clarification on restricting the breath. This type of lots of Qigong uses color breathing. You guys can tell when I'm reading comments, right? I kind of switch my voice a little bit. Lots of Qigong is using colored breathing. What do you mean restrict your breath? I went over that. It's kind of like Ujjayi breath. You're just restricting it from coming in, and then that's creating a vacuum. Your diaphragm is now vacuuming. It's now searching. So the diaphragm's going down. And if your nose or your mouth are open, air is going to flow in through your nose and mouth. When you restrict it and tighten that airway, that valve a little bit, now the diaphragm's still going down. It's going to start searching for other places that it can pull in life force energy. Guys, I'm going to just bring back up etymology right now, just so you guys can see what I mean. Even if you're like a Christian or a science-based person, what I'm saying is supported by like the very language that we use. So I'm going to search here. What should I search? Spirit, which is another word for what I'm talking about. Spiritus is where spirit comes from, which means a breathing or breath. Breath of God. Breath of life, hence life itself. Spirit comes from the same root origin as breath. That essentially means that the word breath is a synonym for the word spirit. It's the exact same thing. Think about inspire, expire, to be inspired. That is all rooted from our perspective, our our awareness of spirit. It comes in through the breath. Now, what I'm saying is that other cultures throughout history and throughout different locations on where we are, have recognized that there's different ways for spirit to come into the body. There's different ways to breathe besides these valves, because these valves aren't actually what's breathing, are they? Which is what I was getting at earlier. Now I'm going over it. These are not what's breathing. These are just the valves. And what's actually breathing is down here. It's like our navel center. And as that breathes, it's looking for open valves. And so if we close off some of these valves and open up other valves, open up your kidneys, open up your perineum, open up the roots of your feet, open up your hands, you're going to start feeling this energy coming through by design. This is how it is. Now about breath, because there's a difference between an inhale and an exhale. So let's all just, again, if you're just slouching and sitting, just however you're at, try. I just readjusted myself, so I'm sure everyone's going to readjust themselves. So whatever. So let's readjust ourselves. Let's sit up tall. Pay attention to your breath. There's an inhale and an exhale. Are you pulling in the inhale, or are you pushing the exhales out, which is really a pull in of the navel point? So an active inhale would be actively pulling in the air. And when we actively inhale, we're pulling in the air, usually into this upper region of our lungs. And then if we're actively inhale, that means that the reason why we have to actively inhale is because there's already stagnant, let's just say that, should I do it on a whiteboard? No. Let's just say that there's your lungs, right? If you're actively inhaling, you're bringing in air into this top area, and this bottom area where a lot of the alveoli that are pulling in the life force or the oxygen or whatever else that we don't know about in the air, it's stagnant down here if we're actively inhaling. And when we actively inhale, how do we exhale? We literally just let the chest collapse. You guys hear my dog barking? I don't know if this microphone's drowning it out, but when a dog barks, that's kind of like an active exhale. It's an active exhale. So when you actively exhale, you expel all of the air. So when you actively inhale, you fill up the lungs. When you actively exhale, you expel everything. Come in here. Solar, lay down. All right, so when you actively exhale, how do you actively exhale? Are you showing us? You pull in your navel center. And when you pull in your navel center, how do you inhale? You relax. The inhale happens automatically. So if we actively inhale, the exhale happens automatically. If we actively exhale, the inhale happens automatically. Now, why am I saying all this? Because an active exhale is going to completely get rid of all of the stagnant energy and air in the totality of your lungs. And then the inhale happens automatically. It's good to practice this. And an easy way to practice this is to do breath of fire, where you're panting like a dog, where you're pulling in that navel center by going, but just pant like a dog, but close your mouth. You're actively exhaling, and then the inhale happens automatically. You don't even have to do it fast like I was just doing it. And this practices you emphasizing the exhale. And when you practice emphasizing the exhale, you're practicing cycling air through your full lungs. For those of you who are aesthetically minded, it also works on your abs from the inside out. This is actually the true strength of your core comes from this place, about 2 inches below your belly button. Take 3 fingers, put it on the bottom of your belly button. From there, that's where you pull in to exhale. This is also going to keep your posture better. I could keep on going on that, but this is what we do in my kriyas. Okay, let's talk about gates of consciousness. All right, I'm getting some questions here. Diaphragm goes down with the exhale? No, diaphragm goes up with the exhale. But just think about your navel point, like the 2 inches below your belly button. Just think about that coming. If this is your spine, think about it just coming. You're pulling your navel point into your spine. Your diaphragm's this muscle, and it's another gate, guys. Like that's actually one of the master gates. And as you inhale, the diaphragm comes down. As you exhale, it goes up. So when you're pulling in the navel center, it's pushing up the air from the bottom of your lungs. It's forcing it up. I mean, even just doing it, you might feel a shift. Can we store energy? Yes, we are a storage and reservoir of energy. Can we store oxygen? That's an interesting question because that's kind of a paradox on how we actually we don't need oxygen. If you just took that sound clip, it's false. But we don't need more oxygen than we're getting. So if the goal is to get oxygen into the cells of our body, the way that happens is with an increase of CO2 in the blood. So as the CO2 in the blood builds up from you, let's say not breathing or breathing less, the CO2 in the blood builds up, which changes the blood pH when it does it. It gets slightly more acidic. And then the hemoglobin, which is carrying the oxygen in the blood, when the blood gets more acidic, it signals the hemoglobin to release oxygen into the cells of the body. Without that buildup of CO2, the oxygen is just going to go straight through your body on the hemoglobin, on the red blood cells, and it's going to cycle back up, and it's not going to get offloaded into your body. This is described, if you guys want to watch a YouTube video about this. It's called the Bohr effect. So BOHR. Let me see if I was just trying to find an easy diagram, but all I see are these charts, which it's not like a picture graph. Bohr effect, BOHR. So what that means is that we actually need to be breathing at a pace that we are under-oxygenated to I'm not really saying this accurately, but we need to not have too much breath. You guys know what happens when you breathe too much? You get lightheaded. Why? It's because it's too much oxygen But why is that bad for us if we need oxygen? It's because it makes it so less oxygen gets into the body. You guys remember like people that hyperventilate? How do we fix that hyperventilation? Like for someone who has asthma or they have an anxiety attack and they're hyperventilating, what's the fix? What's the classic fix? We give them a brown paper bag and they breathe into the bag. So when they're breathing into the bag, what is that doing? Any takers on that one? What are we doing when we give somebody a bag when they're hyperventilating? They're essentially now exhaling CO2, carbon dioxide, into the bag, and then breathing in a greater percentage of CO2 to oxygen every single breath. So they went from breathing lots of oxygen and feeling like they're drowning still. And because they're feeling like they're drowning, their brain tells them to breathe even more. So they're breathing even more, and it's even less oxygen going into their body because of that. And so you give them the bag, and now they're still breathing that same amount, but it's CO2 is getting into, and then now the CO2 can build up in the blood, and then the body can then receive more oxygen. This is why things like, there's a lot of people that answer that, but my live comments are a little bit behind. It's like 15-second delay here. Best books, article, and there's a lot of people that said CO2, so there were people that knew. Best books, articles you'd recommend regarding implementing better breathing practices you're discussing. So one's called Breath by James Nestor. It's a yellow book. And I think there's another book called Breath, or maybe it's called Breathe, that's written by like a MMA dude, somebody like a fighter of some sort. It's not that book. Breath by James Nestor. The one I bought a long time ago was yellow. I'm trying to look for it. It's probably downstairs in that bookshelf. And then there's another one called The Oxygen Advantage, which is another great book. Do I have any textbooks on breath? There's one called The Art of Breathing, but that one's a little bit, oh no, it's called The Anatomy of Breathing, but it's a little bit like textbooky, like for those of you who like pictures and kind of, it feels like a textbook. That one's pretty cool. Those 3 books will set you off for a few months. Thanks for the question. Do you believe in levitation? I know people have seen people levitate. I haven't. And these are people that wouldn't lie to me. And I haven't personally seen it. I haven't personally done it. I feel like I do similar practices that would take you on that road, and I can definitely know that I'm personally, I don't feel like I'm in condition enough to levitate. So do I believe it's possible? If I had to pick yes or no, the answer would be yes. In this material world, yes. The solution is to breathe from the nose. I mean, the nose is actually our breathing instrument. The mouth is for eating. The mouth is for talking. The mouth is sort of like a backup breathing apparatus that we have available to us, but the nose is actually our breathing apparatus. The CO2 then makes the body more efficient at using oxygen, electron transport, and producing red blood cells. Boom. Thank you, Scott. I went on this whole tangent because somebody asked, can you store energy or can you store oxygen in the body? And that's where I was getting to. The CO2 then makes the body more efficient at using oxygen, electron transport, and produces red blood cells. You become more efficient at bringing in energy. Dr. Scott saying Dr. Tom Cohen talks about that it's not the oxygen the body uses as it's the electric charge it facilitates. Is that the guy that wrote the book on the heart? Heart. What's it called? It's not Electric Heart. But yes, the heart. Yes to levitating. That is what I'm working on as a life endeavor. This is my year to achieve. Yeah. So Scott, you understand that it's a process, and that's kind of what I was alluding to. That I'm in like the kindergarten phases of playing with things that would lead to that, but I'm not even journeying in that direction. It's not a priority to me. But Scott's saying it's in his journey. It's something that he has in his sights. I was doing it when I was small, but I forgot how to remember. Thanks, dude. This has been pretty cool. I think he is. Yeah, let me just look at Dr. Cohen book, Heart. Yes, guys. So this book, let me just bring this up here. This book is amazing. I mean, I kind of don't want to click on this Amazon link, but you guys can see it. It's right here. It's called Human Heart, Cosmic Heart. This book's pretty cool. And it's new, too. Is it new? I think it's new-ish. 2016. So there's a lot of stuff with the heart that is it contradicts what we're taught in school. And that's amazing, because what we're taught in school is, it's almost like we had to learn all this stuff to then discover that very little of it is actually true. And that's our initiation. We're initiated into this reality, and we basically, our ability to think on our own and figure out the quote secrets, the stuff that was hidden from us, is our initiation to these other realms of possibility. All right, let me just, okay, so speaking of books, let me get another one. So this one's called, I don't know if this is mirrored or not for you guys. It doesn't quite look like it. Plant Intelligence and the Imaginal Realm into the Dreaming of Earth. Did I say that right? Plant Intelligence and the Imaginal Realm into the Dreaming of Earth by Stephen Herod Buhner. He's not with us anymore, but this writer, this author, was a poet. He was an artist with words. If I were to write a book, I would hope to resemble even 1% of 1% of the artistry and the visualization that he's able to implement into his books. There's two books that I would recommend to read before this. One is called The Secret Teachings of Plants. Let me just, since we're on this whole book kick, let me just pull this up. This one for writers, Becoming Vegetalista. This is actually how to write like he writes. I have it back there. You can't really see it though. It's one of the white ones. Secret Teaching of Plants is what I would recommend before Plant Intelligence of the Imaginal Realm. Ensouling Language is another one. But anyways, These two books. So, man, there's so many. Not Sacred Plant Medicine. Where did it go? Didn't I not just see it? The Secret Teachings of Plants. The Secret Teachings of Plants. Get that first. If you like that, move on to Plant Intelligence and the Imaginal Realm, which is probably a 3 times better book than Secret Teachings of Plants if you read Secret Teachings of Plants. Because if you don't read Secret Teachings of Plants, you're not really on the same level that you can come in and really experience this, Plant Intelligence and the Imaginal Realm. Now, the crazy thing is that both of these books seem to be about plants, but they're more about us. They're more about how all of reality interacts with itself, especially us. Great. I want to read 25 books this year. Keep the recommendations coming. These books by Buhner are pretty thick. This one is 560 pages long. So these are thick books, but like every page I flip to will probably likely be highlighted. Like literally I'm just picking out pages. This one's not. Some comments about the concept of safety. So it looks like, oh, that's the appendix is why. So let me just I've picked 2 so far, 3 highlighted, 4 highlighted. Anything will give up its secrets if you love it enough. George Washington Carver. The shapes of animals and plants are transforms of messages. Language itself is a form of communication. The structure of input must contain an analog of grammar because all anatomy is a transform of the message material, which must be contextually shaped. And finally, contextual shaping is only another term for grammar. Semantics, that is, the study of the meanings of speech forms, especially of the development and changes in meaning or words and word groups, blah, blah, blah. So, good book. In this book, I believe in the beginning, he starts talking about how our consciousness gates information. So now we're going back to that. Our consciousness gates information. And how our subconscious or unconscious is anywhere from like 2 to 10 million. It's processing anywhere from 2 to 10 million bytes of information. And our consciousness is processing like around 120, maybe 180 max, but it's like 120 is normal. And what 120 bits of information, I'll just say bits of information is it's equivalent to 2 conversations. So one conversation is about 60 bits of information. And so imagine having a conversation. You can also kind of walk and do something else. But if you're listening to one person talk to you and you're replying to them and you're looking at another person and you're hearing them talk to you and you're replying to them, so you're having 2 conversations, you're pretty much maxed out. It's going to be very hard for you to do both of those things and make yourself a sandwich. Like you could do one conversation and make yourself a sandwich, but trying to have 2 and make it, you're maxed out of our conscious capability. I think this is a beautiful expression or story or just example of how limited our consciousness, like what is actually above the surface. You guys seen that like iceberg where there's like a little pyramid above the water and then under the water is like this huge iceberg. This is in psychology, we would use that image to describe that our consciousness is that little bit above the water, and then our subconscious or unconscious is below the water. And Our unconscious is processing. So remember, I said 120 bits for consciousness, that little bit above the water. Our subconscious is processing like 2 million to 10 million bits of information. So why so much more? Because our subconscious is doing things like focusing our eyeballs on those two different people. You didn't have to think about that. When you're having a conversation with one person and you look to the other person, your eyeballs literally refocused on another person. That's a huge amount. That's a huge task, a huge amount of energy, a huge amount of information that needs to get processed in a moment. How to speak. You're not thinking about, I need to pull in my belly. At this point, you're not even thinking about standing. You're just focused on the conversation. So there's other parts of you that are focused on standing. And you're not focusing on blood going through your body. You're not focusing on every single thing that's happening in your body. Your digestion, you're not focusing on I need to think this one thought and pull it from this part of my, your brain's just doing that. And why am I saying that? Because what comes up to the surface is gated. And there's so much happening around us that our body is taking in. I gave that example earlier. If you're walking through a crowded bar and all you hear is just tons of noise, you have the band playing, you have the bartender screaming and yelling at people, you have everybody else screaming and yelling at people, you can't make you're just walking through, it's just a buzzing noise. The second that somebody says your name, the second that something inside of you determine this is important information, let's open up the gates so that this one little bit of information comes to the surface above the water so that this organism that we're managing can make sense of it. It's crazy that we're taking in everything. I had a really, really good friend that used to read books by just going to sleep with them playing on Audible. It didn't make sense to me. I didn't practice it enough, but apparently it worked for him. He would go to sleep with books playing, and he would wake up and that information would be inside of him. He would feel like he was able to acquire the information that he heard unconsciously. Now, back to the breath, back to reality, attunement, we're deciding, there's parts of us that are deciding what we're seeing. So are we seeing threats or are we seeing steps to achieve our goal? That's all determined by things like your breath. That's handling those decisions. It's also determined by things like light. What type of light are you bringing in? Because the amount of light you bring in is determining, it's going into your hypothalamus, which is making decisions on what nervous system you're functioning in. Are you functioning in sympathetic or parasympathetic? It's the same thing with your breath. The breath is also coordinating. Is this person needing to be hyper aware and borderline in an adrenaline frequency? Because that's the sympathetic nervous state. And that's determined by how we're breathing and the light source that is landing on our skin, our melanin in our eyes, and the melanin in our hair. After light goes and interacts with the hypothalamus, let me back up, guys. Our eyeball has two cords coming off the back of it. One goes to the occipital lobe. And that's where vision is processed. The occipital lobe is the visual process. Since I've been pulling this up, let me just see if I can pull up another diagram from another book. What's that book called? Light. Medicine of the Future Images. Let me see if we got something here. Come on, I don't see any. They must have almost. I almost got something. I almost got something here. Hypothalamus, pineal gland is involved here. I can't find the exact image I'm looking for. Is it this one? This one? The optic nerve. No, but this demonstrates light. Look at this is from the Journal of Clinical Sleep Medicine, and they're talking about sun going into the eyeball. This isn't the actual chart that I was looking for. What's the guy's name? Jared Lieberman. It's Dr. Jared Lieberman, actually. Come on, where's the chart I'm looking for? But you guys can see the eyeball's right here, and it goes in, and it's going into the deep brain. This is what's operating subconsciously or unconsciously. I can't really find it, the exact. So let me just explain it. There's two cords that come off the brain, and one comes off the eyes. One goes to the optic. One is processing vision, and then going to the occipital lobe, and then the other one is going into this deep inner brain, and it's determining what type of state of nervous system we're in, rest and digest or fight or flight. And then it's going from hypothalamus, it's going to pituitary, and the pituitary gland literally is like everything having to do with hormones. It's like the master hormone center. All right. The master hormone center. And then there's, man, I actually have a whole lecture on this. I wonder if I should pull it up. Let me see if I'm logged into Canva on here. I'm not going to pull it up. So let me just finish my thought here. Hypothalamus to determine the nervous system state, pituitary to determine our hormonal state, and this is all going to then determine what gates are open. And then we have, after the pituitary, the light goes down into the pineal gland, and the pineal gland is then what is giving us insight, right? It's like our inner vision. And it's also producing melatonin. What is melatonin? You guys, I mentioned that the light gets collected by the melanin in the hair and the skin. So back to Etam Online, what is the etymology of melanin? So Milano comes from the word black or dark. So blackness, black, melis comes from black. So mela from melanin means dark or black, and things are dark and black because what? They're not reflecting light. So they hold on to light. So think about our pupils. It's holding on to light, so we see it as black. As it's capturing all the light and it's not letting it out. It's bringing it into the body. It's going processing vision, and it's going into our hypothalamus, pituitary, pineal gland. And then in our pineal gland, the pineal gland produces what? You guys remember that journal that I showed you on the Journal of the Clinic of Sleep or something like that, right? Why is the sleep clinic talking about the sun shining light in the eyes? Why was that in the article? It's because when you sleep, in order to get to deep sleep, you use a hormone that's produced by the pineal gland called melatonin. And melatonin, back to the word, the etymology, it's that same word, melanin, melatonin. Melatonin, that word tonin comes from the word tonic. So melatonin is produced by the pineal gland, which literally means dark or black tonic. And why are things dark and black? Because they're holding light. They're the holders of light. Black, something that's black is means that all the light's hitting it and none's coming out. It's holding light. That's why when we get tanned, it's solar cells that are like, oh, this person's going out in the sun a lot. Let's develop darkness so that we can hold on to more light, more information, and then carry it through the body. There's neuromelanin. There's melanin inside the body, guys. Melanin is not made to protect us from the sun. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in the body. Melanin is also used in technology to do what? To transfer electrons. The difference between a photon and an electron is that an electron has mass, a photon doesn't. But other than that, they're essentially the same thing. So pineal gland produces melatonin, which is dark tonic, which essentially means it's the light tonic. It's the tonic of the information of the light that does what? It recalibrates you. It refreshes you. It regenerates you while you are sleeping. So that's how light will make information available to your body to make adjustments to your hormonal system, to make adjustments to are you in rest and digest or fight or flight? And then that's going to determine, this is the unconscious of your body, the inner part of your brain, of your body, going to determine what is allowable to come through into your higher centers of conscious awareness. And it's amazing. It's amazing because this is why being outside, being in nature, being our full authentic self is so powerful for us. Because the body is making decisions, it's informing itself based on your environment, based on how you're breathing within your environment, how you're interacting within your environment. Are you like, is your feet touching the earth, or are you always 30 feet above the soil, disconnected from the information of the earth? Because that all is going into your body, it's processing, and then your conscious experience of life is determined on all of this other stuff that's going on behind the scenes. All right, guys, I'm here every week, Wednesday at noon Pacific time. Thank you for your comments, and you can follow me at raw_of_earth, RA_OF_earth. I love talking about this. I've been into the human being and the human experience for my entire life. This is just one of my passions, and sharing it is definitely one of my missions, because I, amongst all of this, know that reality is a creation of us, of man. We are creating this. We're humans. We're light hues manifesting. So we're hue manifestors. We're hue creators within this physical environment. And I would love to live in everybody's dream world, their dream creations, as opposed to their creations of fear and anxiety and stress, depression, guilt, shame, apathy, anger, because we're powerful at creating, and we will create from those centers, that state of being as well. And so it's one of my missions to empower people to create from a sense of responsibility, like being able to respond to life in a way that is harmonious, so that we all get to live in each other's dream worlds. Because ultimately there's just one of us. Like, it's all going to accumulate and assimilate down to one. Like, there are no others. We're all aspects of the same entity. We can say we're all aspects of this one reality, or universe, right? One song, universe. And bringing harmony to that is our duty here. It's the lessons that we're learning. All right, take care, everybody. Have a beautiful existence.